another interview and they are so not qualified. What are you doing? Oh my God. Have you ever been there? I've seen it a lot. Oh my gosh. We have like 51 interviews coming up just for one of our companies, and we do recruiting for a lot of companies. So if you need help with done for you recruiting, definitely check out some of our services down below. But I get it. If you have people who are unqualified coming to the interview, it's frustrating. Like there's nothing, they should be prevented before you get there, but there is a balance with making sure that you're letting enough traffic come through your funnel in order to have people to interview. So it's a balance. So let's go into what we would consider when it comes to your application deal breakers. And in this video, we're going to do just that. If we haven't met, hey, I'm Crystal from crystalbella.co. I'm a hiring expert, and we manage over 1 million in hiring ads for small business owners, and I've seen over 5 million applicants go through our system. So when it comes to what's working and what's not working, you're going to be the first to know, as long as you hit the subscribe button down below so you don't miss a thing. So we're going to break this down into 5 things that you want to consider for your application. Number 1, do you have the essentials? Their name, last name, address, city, zip code. You may want to use this into their provider profile and a lot of other places as well too. Number 2 is making sure that you have the minimum viable deal breakers on the application to know that this person is absolutely qualified to be able to speak to somebody at the interview. I'm not talking about they're fully able to go and start work tomorrow. I'm talking about if they have this, then great, I want to speak to them. What is that? If you have too much on the application and it's not the minimum that you would need, then you would want to possibly remove some of those at this time. Now, if you don't have the minimum viable, then just brainstorm. Like if you were to talk to somebody and what questions would you ask? If they said no to this question, would that make you not hire them? If so, that could be a deal breaker question. Those are questions that are typically your minimum viable deal breakers that you would want to have on your application. Number 3, does it pass the 5-minute or less test? So your application is typically being sponsored, and you got to remember that these people are out and about. They're typically in a line, who knows where, and they're busy. They have lives, or maybe they have kids. And I have kids. I have 3 kids. They're busy. You want to make sure that your application, especially if you're putting money behind it, is able to get completed within 5 minutes or less. So with this in mind, I want you to look at the questions that you have on your application and make sure that you don't really have text answers that you need to respond to questions. You want to kind of use radio button questions, which help you set deal breakers, because if they choose this, then they're not qualified. If they choose this, then it lets them through. So go over your application and just go through and see if there was any text-based questions that you could remove out of the application, especially if it's not considered a minimum viable deal breaker, then you would probably want to have that removed. Now, if it's something you may need, I have seen, for instance, maybe like list your last 3 jobs. You can do that, but have it as one little area and make it super easy. Like just give me like a scribble scrabble of what your past 3 jobs were and the length that you were at them. That could be one, but remember, you've got to choose. Is that important? Or could you ask that in the interview and the interviewer write that down? Or do you want to have another question? But remember, these questions aren't really deal breaker questions. They are something that can be more assessed into the interview process. So consider removing any of those. I would say typically no more than 2. We typically have one to describe how they would do a certain scenario on a job. And then if you want to have an additional one, that's where I would use that option. But typically I do not recommend having any more than the essentials being a text field. So number 4 is there anything that is confusing? This means confusing answers, confusing deal breakers. Too often I see a lot of answers to questions being very similar, and it could be something, if you're quick, it could be easily missed. So double check, look over the application, see if there's any answers that you could change to be clearer that it is completely the bad option to pick versus a good option to pick. And number 5, is the application upbeat and fun. I always like to add this into little pieces in the process because it makes your company stand out versus another. You could phrase a question just to be more salesy or enticing. An easy way to do this is to just phrase your answer in an exciting way. I have an example which is common, I feel like, is do you have supplies and equipment? You could also have something just saying, as an independent provider, you are responsible for having your own supplies and equipment. Can you confirm that you have supplies and equipment versus some, plain Jane answer? You want to kind of look at it and hope that it's upbeat if possible. So add in some pizzazz if you can and just spruce it up. And you're going to start to see just more applications come through as long as you're following these 5 tactics. If you want more help with getting visibility to your job post, definitely check out this video we did with how to hit your hiring goals, and we break it all down in that video. If you need more help, definitely check out our talent attraction formula down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.